Hello everyone. We are going to look at absolute value because in our very first lesson we're looking at absolute value as we talk about integers. So first of all, let's look at getting a definition of absolute value. Absolute value. Absolute value is a measure of distance. And one thing to remember about distance is that distance is always positive. So you have to keep that in mind as you look at absolute value. It's always positive. So what does that mean when we say it is always positive? It doesn't mean that the elements inside the absolute value are positive. What it means is that it produces a positive as it takes the absolute value. So the symbol of absolute value is these two long lines, straight lines. Those are absolute value marks. So if I say the absolute value of a 3, this is 3 units from 0, so it is a distance of 3, and therefore it is a 3. The absolute value of a negative 3 is also 3 units from 0, so that is also a 3. Now, one thing you have to understand about absolute value is that it cannot be confused with a parentheses. So if we have a parentheses, and I have a 3 inside parentheses, it is equal to 3. If I have a negative 3 inside parentheses, it is equal to a negative 3. If I have a negative 1 times a negative 3 inside parentheses, this becomes a negative times a negative produces a positive, and this makes a positive 3. If I had a negative 1 times an absolute value of a negative 3, this is not the same as this, where I can multiply those two together. As long as this negative 3 is inside the absolute value, I have to take care of my absolute value first. So this becomes negative 1 times a positive 3, because that negative 3 inside the absolute value mark is a positive 3. And now negative 1 times that 3 is equal to a negative 3. This could also have been written as a negative of an absolute value of a negative 3, and it would be exactly the same thing, because that negative would be like saying negative 1 times a negative 3. So, what does this mean when we have more than one thing that is done inside the absolute value? Well, we have to do it first. So let's look at a couple like that. Okay? Negative 5 plus 9. So the first thing you're going to do is inside our absolute value, we are going to take negative 5 plus 9, which is going to equal a 4, because negative 5 plus 9 is 4, and the absolute value of a 4 is 4. So it's important to carry these absolute value marks until you actually do the absolute value. If I had a negative 2 times negative 3 minus 7 inside our absolute value, my first thing I'm going to do is take care of what is inside the absolute value. Negative 3 minus 7 is going to give you a negative 10 inside that absolute value. And that negative 2 is outside, multiplying what is inside. Our next step is to take care of what is inside, so you have a negative 2. And the absolute value of a negative 10 is a positive 10. So now I have negative 2 times 10, which is a negative 20. So as you can see, They do not act exactly like parentheses. It groups like parentheses, but you can't multiply across the absolute value like you can with parentheses. So you must be careful with things like that. So pay attention to your absolute value marks, and you will define. There's about half a dozen problems using your absolute value marks in lesson number 1 of Math 100. So there it is. It's all set for you.